Hello, everybody. All right, so let me adjust a little bit. Okay, so I do expect to have low attendance today because we did change the day. That's why it's important, if you do want to stay up with the Q and A, that if you have WhatsApp, go ahead and join the WhatsApp group. There's in the description you will find the link, and it will get you set up for getting notifications. Anyway, let me give you guys an update since we don't have any questions. But feel free to interrupt me if you do have a question. Okay. So you guys know I got out of the hospital, and I feel a whole bunch better. Praise God, right? I feel a whole bunch better. The problem right now, hello, Mariole. Nice to see you. The problem right now is that I have to go 15 hours a week to be on dialysis. And I just got back. So I say 15, it's 4 hours, but you got the bit of time beforehand, the bit of time afterwards. So it does actually take out 5 hours of my day. So, and I do that three times a week. And I'm trying to find a way to make that work. Right now, today was the best day so far as trying to get stuff done while I'm there, right? And I figured out the whole fatigue thing. I was having to come home and sleep. Yeah, sleep for an hour after sitting down for 5 hours. So yes, right now, I'm not as productive as I feel like I should be because I feel great right now. I'm not as productive right now as I would like, just because it's just a huge time commitment to do that dialysis stuff. A huge time commitment. But yes, I feel better than I've felt in years. I'm not exaggerating. I feel a whole bunch better than I have in many years. Let me pull up, make sure there are no questions. I'm going to pull up the website real quick. I don't expect there to be, because, like I said, this is every time we change the day, it takes people a while to figure it out. Yeah, I've got no new comments, no messages, no questions. So if you've got questions, feel free to go ahead and ask. Let me see if there's anything I can talk about off the top of my head. I've been working on some ideas for a book that you guys, and I say you guys, it's not the same people, but the Q and A, a while back ago, I said something about how trumpet to play trumpet well, you have to be supernatural. To play trumpet well, you have to be supernatural. Well, what do we mean by supernatural? You have to be over and above what's natural for the human body, over and above what's natural for the human mind. And someone said, hey, you should write a book, The Supernatural Trumpet Player, or something like that. And I put it on the to-do list. It'd be nice, a nice little read. And I've been putting some ideas together. Now, that was years ago. And actually, talking about the dialysis stuff, sitting there doing nothing, I don't ever sit and do nothing. But, figuratively, sitting there on my butt, I do take my laptop. I do try to get work done. But, yeah, that's the point, is that sitting there in the dialysis, I'm thinking, well, maybe now I can put together a short little book. I'm thinking maybe 40 pages of my ideas about supernatural trumpet playing. And the first thought that you guys have heard me say this before, the first thought that entered my mind was that the way we know a supernatural player is someone who's not trying hard. We always think that in order to get something that's better, you have to try harder. And there have been times when I've talked about, on this Q and A, about trying harder doesn't lead to better trumpet playing. Because if you think about it, what I mean by that, right? Let's say you're on stage, you make a mistake, and your response to that mistake is, oh, let me now try harder. What are you going to try harder to do? What is that? What is it? What does it mean to try harder? Are you going to concentrate more? That's not a thing. Either you're concentrating or you're not concentrating. Okay? Does it mean that you're going to put in more physical effort? Well, that's not necessarily an answer to anything on the trumpet. So really the word try harder is more like an emotional expression, and the emotion stuff can really screw you up. When you have pent up emotions, especially, and then something else that this led me to is the whole concept that people have that, and you hear, it's a popular thing, and I'm not talking about trumpet players. That happens with trumpet players, but I'm talking about all across the musical industry. The people to interview somebody, and they'll say, uh, it was my passion for music that carried me through. It was my passion for music that made me so good. I don't believe that. Every time I've worked with somebody, and including in my own life, right? When you have passion, that's an emotional thing, and it's fleeting. All emotions are fleeting. You can't make yourself be happy. You can't make yourself be angry. You can't make yourself. Oh, you might be able to switch that on for a second. It'll go away. So you might be able to turn on passion for a second. What are you going to do when the passion's gone? And so, regardless, I say a second, right? regardless of how long you have that passion. Maybe for some reason you're able to sustain passion about for music. Maybe you're able to sustain passion for music over a 2-year period. I've not seen it, but let's say hypothetically, okay, you sustain passion for music over a 2-year period. What do you do when it goes away? Do you stop practicing now? Do you stop thinking clearly now? What happens when the passion goes away? And the passion will go away. Maybe not this moment, but it will go away. So what do you do about that? What do you do about that? What happens, the way I see it, is the people that lose their passion are automatically dumped into a world of negative emotions because they want that passion back. And now, because they have this belief that it's the passion that's doing all this good for them. So they have this belief that they have to get this passion back. And the deficit between where they are with the passion and where they want to be creates all kinds of extremely negative emotions. You've got panic, you've got fear, you've got jealousy, you've got um, greed. All of these find a place into um, your 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 concept for music, and so and it's falsely labeled when that happens. It's falsely labeled as passion, right? Because the guy that's lost his passion. What now? Let's define passion here a little bit. What is the passion? So I think when people say it's my passion that carried me through, I think what they're talking about is that this joy, this happiness, this uh, satisfaction, emotional satisfaction that they get out of playing an instrument makes it almost effortless for them to pick the horn up and practice, almost effortless to go on stage and do what has to be done. And I do understand the power of that emotion. The problem, like I said, is that it goes away. And then what comes in its place is more negative anger, fear, all of that negative stuff, the stuff that will chew your bones up, the stuff that'll put cortisol all over your body and chew you up. But it looks on the surface from the outside, it looks like passion, right? Because you've got this drive, this drive to get that good feeling back. And if you're one of those that believes that the reason the passion was there is because you were worshiping the trumpet god, you guys have heard me talk about the trumpet god here. Um, yeah, if you're one of those guys that that you you think that the reason why you're not having that passion anymore is because you didn't practice enough, or because you know um, you something happened and you just didn't uh, please the trumpet god, and now your passion's gone. Yeah, it's so to me the whole if you want to be a great trumpet player, you can't get wrapped up in all that. You can't get wrapped up in that at all because it's there's no Me personally, let me tell you what I know that there's self-reporting people who profess that their passion did all these wonderful things for them. I have never worked with a student, and remember, I've worked with literally thousands of students. I've never worked with a student that there was evidence that their emotional bliss on the instrument, that their emotional drive on the instrument uh, did anything to help them become great players. It's always been for me the opposite way around. It's always been for me the other way around. You know, the guys that have that drive, that emotional drive, almost always play worse than the other players. I'm a great example of that. I remember in high school, um, because I did have that unhealthy desire when I was in high school. I did have that, and probably most of college too. Um, and I remember people were talking about the guy that was first chair when I was a junior. I remember everyone saying that that guy didn't practice. Nobody believed it. Not everyone. I said that wrong. It wasn't everyone that was saying. He was saying that. The guy that was first chair, and he, as far as like all state jazz, he was remarkable, right? I can't remember exactly. I think he made it 4 times first chair. If that's how I remember it, I might be wrong. I might be remembering it wrong, but he made the way I remember it is he made all state first chair, all state jazz first chair, when they only had one band 4 times, and he claimed that he never practiced. And back then, nobody believed him. I remember people saying, "Oh, he's only saying that so you let your guard down and you won't be as good as him." Like a competitive thing. No, do you know what? I actually think he didn't practice because this is why do I think that? Because I've met plenty of people that say the same thing. There are plenty of great trumpet players who don't practice. It's just the truth. It's true. That can't be debated now. Uh, Now, what do I mean by great? You know, you can be the best in your town. Well, some of the best trumpet players in Houston didn't practice. The guys that I used to work with didn't practice. So how does that work with your passion, right? The guys that I'm talking about, they, uh, the one guy I'm thinking specifically about right now, uh, this was a gig for him. It was a job, and he didn't want to spend any more time doing it than what it took to make the money. And he was one of the best guys in town for what he did. So getting back to the point, we look at the idea of being a great trumpet player that it's that it to be a great trumpet player you have to be supernatural. And the first thought I was exploring in that context was this being driven by the emotion. That's that doesn't do it. You can't. I can tell you that when you learn how to practice properly, there's not there's no amount of passion that can replace that. There's no amount of passion that can um, substitute for proper practice time. And when we talk about trying harder, when we talk about trying harder, uh, if you practice properly, there is no trying harder. If you practice, and right now I'm talking about when I say this stuff, it applies all across the board. But the ideas I have in my head when I say when you practice properly, I'm not talking about my books. I'm not talking about um, putting the routines in the right order, like the stuff that's in the um, one range book. Not talking about that. That's part of it too, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like when you learn a piece of music, when you learn your skills, when you learn the techniques that we have to do to be a great player. Double tonguing, triple tonguing. When you learn that stuff, if you use proper techniques, I shouldn't say proper, if you use proven, let's use the word proven. If you use proven techniques, then there is no need. There's no need. So, and isn't that liberating? You don't have to get up in the morning and feel like practicing. You just do it. A lot of times, the students will hear me say, "It's just business," and you can say, I haven't had anyone say this yet, but I have these imaginary conversations. You can say, uh, "Well, Mr. Lewis, music is supposed to express your emotions." Well, hallelujah. Now we don't have to have it bottled up, right? We can do our it's only business approach to the practicing. And then when we're actually playing the music, we can put our heart and soul into the music so that it's not bottling up. Don't put your heart and soul into the practicing. Put your heart and soul into the actual music that's coming out of the horn. That's another thing, right? This has been like bizarre, right? The people I've worked with that had the most passion for the music were oftentimes the ones that had no passion in their music. I remember one time, I won't mention who it was, but there was somebody I used to be in competition with many, many years ago. Friendly competition, but still competition. And I used to laugh because the guy would like do his facial expressions and the the back and forth, and his eyes would flutter, and and I just thought that was funny because what was coming out of his horn was not nearly as expressive as what was coming off of his body language. I think that's one of the reasons why I'm not into body language as part of our expression. I understand that there's a assumption that the audience is too musically illiterate to get what we're doing without us feeding the expression to them through our body language. Um, I don't have as low of opinion about the audiences as that. I don't think that the audiences are nearly as musically ignorant as people say. All that said, you know what? I do believe that when it comes to the intellectual side of music, yes, they're ignorant. But when it comes to what they can hear, I don't think they have any. I think they can tell when someone's expressive and when someone's not. And they don't need to be fooled into thinking, oh, I'm so expressive. You don't have to do all that body language stuff, um, to get people to know that you're a great player. I love watching um, videos with players that don't do that, right? One of my favorites is Michael Brecker, right? He'll he'll play this beautifully expressive solo. He's a tenor sax player, right? And and almost the whole time he's got his eyes closed and he's almost motionless except for what he's doing with his fingers, right? Almost motionless. He's got his eyes closed and he's just playing his horn. I have a DVD of him and Steps Ahead. Is that the name of the band? I think it's Steps Ahead. And yeah, they're in. It's live in Japan or something like that. They've got in the band. Oh, I forget the name of the guitar player. But anyway, yes, a great guitar player. The whole band is just great. And uh, Michael Becker is like playing this beautiful solo, and he's just standing there, playing. And I understand the whole close your eyes thing because you want to be able to concentrate. And so when you have your eyes open, you start seeing stuff. And anyway, well, you guys can ask questions. I just filled up a half hour at a time. Uh, please feel free to ask whatever you want to ask. But yes, that's the stuff I've been thinking about lately. Now, there's other stuff besides just the emotional stuff. The one of the things we have to do to get a good tone on the trumpet is to have enough control over our body. Hello, Larry. Nice to see you. We have to have enough control over our body to sit still. And if you want to be able to play well while moving around, that's a whole different level because you have to have the ability to move in a way that doesn't affect the tone that comes out of your horn. I think that's one of the only one of the only benefits um, to marching band is learning how to get a good sound while you're tromping around in the field. Larry says one range book arrived at my door today. Well, wonderful. I hope you like it. I hope you get something out of it. Please let me know if you have any questions along the way. I don't think that's our best-selling book. I think our best-selling book is the hymn duets, but it's pretty close to it's like real high up there of being one of the best-selling books that we've got. Any other questions or any first questions? Yeah. Larry says, that's great. I'm a comeback trumpet player. Well, welcome back to the trumpet community. Yeah. How long did you go without playing? Years. Okay. The comeback thing can be, I've been talking for over a half hour about the emotional stuff. I think that's the biggest obstacle for the comeback players. In all the years I've been working with comeback players, I started comeback My first comeback player was I had a female student, and her father decided that he wanted to take lessons too, and he hadn't played since high school or whatever, and so that was in the early '90s. I've been teaching comeback players ever since, and uh, I think the biggest problem that I see in almost every comeback student is the emotional stuff when they it's rooted in them comparing themselves now to how they were back then. There's a lot of that. And that's understandable too, right? Because a lot of times that's why they decided they wanted to come back. They remember how great that felt to do something well. There he says, I was in the Cavalier Drums and Bugle Corps back in the 70s and 80s, and last played a few years after high school. I've watched your comeback series. Good. And going back and watching your Q and A videos from session one. Ah, that's gonna take a long time. We've got a bunch of them. You're on number 16 now. Well, that's great. Um, I would be curious if you see how, in the process of doing that, if you see anything that I've taught during that time that changed, because it's been years now, and who knows, I might have changed my some of my philosophies since. And if someone ever points that out to me, I will welcome that, because I find that kind of thing interesting. It's not. We think that a method is etched in stone like a book, but the book is more like a photocopy, not a photocopy. The book is like a photo of that moment in time. Hello, Julie. Julie says, I'm coming to believe that you have to be what I am calling the stoic trumpeter. You have to rely on the discipline, technique, and know the passion is icing on the cake. I agree with that. I agree with that. 100%. I agree with that. So yeah, the biggest problem with the comeback players is just how disappointed they get when and here's what I think. I don't think that they're accurately hearing how they play today compared to how they played before. I don't believe that's an accurate. And even if you have recordings, that's still not accurate. That was a moment in time. And I think what happens is what we try to compare is our elation, our emotions, our emotional reaction to how we played back then to our emotional reaction to how we play now. And here's what I like to tell people about the comeback thing is that your musical education didn't stop when you stopped playing the trumpet. Your musical education continued. Every movie you watched with a trumpet soundtrack, every song you heard that had trumpets in the trumpet in the band, um, everything you ever saw or experienced that had trumpets or music or the discussion of trumpets, your trumpet life didn't stop there. So when you judge yourself now, it's not from the same perspective. You're judging yourself now after a lifetime of growing as a trumpet player. Yes, I'm going to say it that way. Your internal image of your mind, I mean, your internal image in your mind of what trumpet's supposed to sound like has been growing all along. So when you compare, if your whole objective, and with students like this, I would like for them to change their objective, even though that's the reason they came back to it. If your whole objective is to relive those memories, that's going to only cause frustration. So the best way to relive those memories is to let that go. Let your memories of how good you were, of how wonderful you used to sound, let that all go, and just re-explore the trumpet all over again. Truly start over. Don't don't hold uh, your old abilities up as a litmus test for how good you're playing now. You can't do that. It will only lead to frustration and eventually will cause you to quit. Larry says, I've been using a book, Practical Approach for the Intermediate Trumpet Player by John Holyfield. He mentions you a great number of times. What? That's a surprise to me. Where do I know that name from? Let me look this up. That's the most surprising thing. Oh, that's that. Larry says he was one of my students. Wow. Yeah. Wow. Look at that. Um, well, that's wonderful. That's like the best news of the day, huh? That's the best news of the day. Wow. Let me see if I can. Yeah, I don't know. This is amazing. I didn't know anything about that. Hello, Jeffrey. Wow. Well, I'm flattered. So yes, the name sounds familiar to me. Uh, like I said, I've taught thousands of students. I don't know why I can't place this, but the name is familiar. Well, that's a huge compliment. A huge compliment. I was telling somebody recently, I was saying, you know, if I had to choose, not that I want to be famous, don't get me wrong. I don't think there's anything positive about being famous or popular or anything like that. I don't think there's anything positive about it. And I would rather not be, right? What I tell people when it comes to that kind of thing, I would rather be, the term would be well regarded instead of popular. And the way I describe that is that the popular guy is the one you will invite to your party, have them come out, and they lighten up the party or whatever, and so yeah, now you want them to come to your party all the time. Highly regarded is the guy you want to have on your gig. highly regarded is the guy that you want to have teach your grandchildren. Does that make sense? So I would much rather be highly regarded um, than popular. But I was talking to somebody. I said if I had to be popular, if I had to be popular, I would be rather be popular for helping people out than to be popular for how well I play. Does that make sense? I would rather be popular as a trumpet teacher than to be popular as a trumpet player. Um, so yes, to me that's hearing that I mentioned in somebody else's books, um, and that person was a student of mine. I'm embarrassed that I don't remember who that is. I know the name, but I'm embarrassed that it doesn't ring bells. Clear enough for me to know who it is. Um, and I don't see a proper biography online. Oh, look at that. He's in my testimonials. My own website comes up. Let me see what he said. Uh, okay. He's an ex Claude Gordon person. Wow. So, yes, here's a link to my kudos page on my website. And he's, I guess, about halfway down, a little over halfway. I mean, a little above halfway. Yeah. I don't think he was ever my student. I think I think what happened is he learned out of my books. Um, very good. I'm very thrilled to hear that he's acknowledged me. You know, people don't have to acknowledge you. So when they do, it's a huge honor. Really. He could have just taken what he learned and taken it to the next level, right? He could have taken it to the next level and uh, never even mentioned me. The fact that he does is, in my opinion, is huge. Any other questions? Kind of mellow today, huh? What do you guys have? What questions do you have? I haven't updated this kudos page in a long time. I think 2 or 3 years ago. So any other questions? Well, Larry, let us know if you're still here. Let us know how it goes with your progress. or you can contact me privately if you want. Any questions? Yeah, the Stoic thing, going back to what Julie said, the Stoic thing is a big deal. Basically, that's what I'm describing, right? Except that I don't use the word Stoic in capital, right? I always say that because if you use the word Stoic in with a capital, and I'm not, don't get me wrong, I'm not criticizing Julie here. All right, I'm talking about the way I do it, right? I use a lowercase j, j. Where did that come from? A lowercase s to indicate that I'm not a what would you call it? A member of the Stoic philosophy. We can use the word Stoic as an adjective, and it has meaning. It means that you're trying to not let your emotions affect your behavior. So that's to me because I've dealt what happened to me is I used to use the word Stoic because I knew that that was a feature in the way I was, right? And so I looked into the actual philosophy, and there's a bunch of stuff in the philosophy, the Stoic philosophy, that yeah, I just can't wholeheartedly accept that. So if we're going to use Stoic as an adjective to describe, like what I said, someone who does not allow uh, emotions to affect your behavior. So like someone who you can spit on them or whatever, and they don't get angry, or they don't let their anger make them lash out. Um, they can be sad, and they don't let the the emotions control that. None of that. All of the emotions. Happiness even, right? People don't know how dangerous happiness is. When you're happy, you're more likely to do dumb stuff. And people that want to sell you something will try to make you happy so that you uh, don't think about what you're doing. That way they can sell you what they want to sell you. A stoic person doesn't let them do that. Now, talking about happiness, uh, I've, I've for many, many years been anti-happiness, but joy, and this is just my own thing, right? This is just my own thing. I'm not saying this is, you're not going to get this from Webster or Encyclopedia Britannica or even online. You're not going to find anybody saying this. But to me, happiness is superficial. Joy is the other end of that spectrum. Joy is the happiness that you have, the contentedness you have on a spiritual level. And yes, your joy can manifest as happiness, but happiness, like we talked about earlier with the emotional stuff, happiness comes and happiness goes. Joy is something you can have even when you're sad or angry or desperate or whatever other emotions you're experiencing. Joy is like the bedrock that those things happen over the top of. Joy is not a fleeting, like I said, I'm saying this according to my definition. Nobody else has to agree with me. But yes, I've always had. Even I was thinking about this the other day, right? Because when I finally got out of the hospital, and now that I've had like some of the treatments that I've had since I got out, they fixed a bunch of stuff. I realize now I was sick for a long time. I didn't know it back then. I realize now that I was sick for a very long time. And uh, even in the worst of it, I still had that deep bedrock joy in my spirit underneath all of that. Uh, it got so bad towards the end there that I would sit in my chair, like even after the lessons, right? So I'd sit here. This is where I teach most of the time because of the Skype lessons, right? I'd sit here. The lesson is over. I know I have to go over here to do something, and I couldn't get up. And it was not. It was a combination of things, but there was also no drive to get up. It, so physically, emotionally, everything at that point was working against me. And I would get through with a lesson and I would put my head down and try to muster up enough effort to get out of the chair. And it would happen like all throughout the day. If I sat down to tie my shoes, I would sit down, uh, and bending over was a chore because I was bloated with water. Bending over was terrible. Um, and just motivating myself to bend over and tie my shoes was a Herculean effort. But even during all of that, I still had underneath that joy that doesn't make any sense. It just couldn't make it to the surface. I hope that makes sense. In the Bible, it talks about joy that defies all understanding or something like that. Um, and yes, I've had that my whole life. I do believe it's because I'm a Christian, or not because I'm a Christian, but because I, um, you know, have a relationship with Jesus. I do believe that. Um, but yeah, my whole life. What makes this last period of my life so different was that um, I was miserable on the surface. On the surface, this is the worst thing I've ever been for me. It was heavy, heavy, heavy. Um, and there were times when I had such a depth of sadness. Yeah, most recent. Yeah, so um, yeah, and so to have that degree of sadness, because I could tell that my whole life was falling apart, but I couldn't do anything about it. But still, underneath all of that, I still had that spiritual joy that I'm talking about. And uh, I'll tell you what, I'm very happy now. You can't go through that and then come through it and then have a normal life again and not have happiness. So yes, right now I am in a period of happy emotions and all of that kind of stuff, elation. But no, uh, that's not what drives me. If I have those emotions or I don't have those emotions, I don't believe that should make a difference in my life. Now here's something that I will say. When you do have happiness, you should enjoy it. Enjoy it while it's there. It's because it's seasonal. It's not going to be there forever. So sit back and enjoy the ride. And then when those emotions are not there, hunker down and make sure that you ride it out till you get that that next cycle or whatever next season. I hope that makes sense. Um, yeah, we've been talking a lot about the emotions, and yes, the Stoic thing. We're only talking about that upper level of emotions. This is the chemical stuff that happens in your body. The chemical stuff, the hormones, the different hormone cocktails that your body generates in response to a stimuli. Um, that's the superficial stuff. That's the superficial. Um, I don't, a lot of people talk about how you have to have that word happiness. Maybe what they mean is more like what I mean by the word joy. That's possible, right? That's possible. But that's how I see it. You know, I say it's possible. Most people, when I talk to them about being happy, let's use for an example, there are people who will, and don't misunderstand me. I'm not trying to get in the middle of anything. I don't know anybody their stories, so don't be offended if this sounds like I'm talking about you. That's not possible, right? But if someone leaves their spouse because they want to be happy, that's they basically what they're saying is I want to break up this family that I already have for the chance that maybe I'll have these emotions that are fleeting more often. And that's just not a thing. I'm not saying, I don't, well, I shouldn't be talking about that, but, people have their reasons for divorce. And I'm not trying to get in the middle of that subject. Well, you guys know that I don't cross that line. But when I hear people talk about divorce in that context, that's they're only talking about the emotions. They're only talking about the emotions, and you can have joy no matter how tumultuous your marriage is. Your and that's because here's the thing: emotions are triggered by stimuli, right? Deep rooted joy is not. Emotions are triggered by stimuli. Things that happen to you in your life cause emotions to happen. And we were talking a few Q and A's ago about uh, about that, right? The it's and I finally figured out in front of all you guys that because I would often say that there's uh, that you can control your emotions. You can't control your emotions. That's incorrect. You can only control your reaction to those emotions. You cannot control your emotions. You can only control your reaction. And uh, the emotions will come and go. Now, I do believe that the more you control your reaction, the less easily triggered you are. I do believe that in an indirect way, you can make it less severe. And maybe the reason for that is because if you do let your emotions control you, now you're going to do some stupid stuff that will make it worse. Whereas if you don't let your emotions control you, then you won't do that stupid stuff and you can let what happened earlier just pass. Let that emotion pass and not have to do anything about it. So yes, and what does that have to do with trumpet? I think it has everything to do with trumpet. We talked about the comeback players. We talked about supernatural. If you want to be a great trumpet player, the passion that you have is superficial. It's emotional. And then that flip side of the passion, that's also emotional. We still call that passion, but it's more of an anger, it's more of a desperation, it's a more of a panic, but it's one and one with the passion. So yeah, um, I do think that to be a stoic trumpet player is the way to go. Um, because you cannot access, I'm sorry, you cannot access the skills of becoming a great trumpet player without that. Anyway, we are out of time. Thank you for joining me. I'm glad we had at least somebody show up. Right? Every time I change the time, it's sparse for a while. Um, this had to happen. I had a Larry says thank you. Well, you're welcome. I had my Saturdays uh, blow up schedule wise. Um, Longest Saturdays that I've ever had. There used to be times when I was teaching a lot on Saturday. This is more than that ever was. So I just couldn't keep doing this. Uh, and for that matter, I needed to open it up for the students. Hello, Karen. Nice to see you. All right. Well, we'll see you next time. God bless you. Have a great weekend. Okay.